benefit for upstairs.
When you go out to eat at a public restaurant, there's an unspoken standard of trust between the customer and those behind the counter. Many people actively worry that their food will be tampered with, and for this reason, there are laws in place in most countries that protect the customer from this very thing. Well, the people you see in this footage are absolutely deplorable, and not only did they break all of these laws, but they proudly posted it online for the world to see, and I can assure you whatever you're thinking they might do, it's about 10 times worse. I'll tell you everything, but as usual, let's get into the backstories first. So many of you might actually remember this whole situation if you were on the internet in the late 2000s, but it's largely just been forgotten in time, and it actually had a lost media hunt tied to it fairly recently, so I figured it was worth talking about. It's just genuinely disgusting, and I was even more appalled when I found out that the people who made these videos were way older than I remember them being when I heard about this years ago. At first glance, the videos didn't look like much. The lighting was crap, the audio was shaky, and seemed like just another low-effort prank uploaded to YouTube in 2009. But what they showed and what they implied would spiral into one of the biggest public relations disasters a major food chain had faced in years. It started in April 2009 at a Domino's Pizza location in Conover, North Carolina. Two employees, 32-year-old Michael Setzer and 31-year-old Christy Hammonds, had been working behind the scenes in the store's kitchen when they decided to film themselves doing something they thought would be funny. They weren't trying to make a point, they weren't protesting working conditions, there was no social statement behind what they did. Instead, they simply recorded what could only be described as deliberate, disgusting behavior, and then they uploaded it for the world to see. The videos, titled Disgusting Domino's People, were posted to YouTube on April 13, 2009. In them, Setzer is seen inserting pieces of cheese up his nose and his behind, sneezing onto sandwich ingredients, and pretending to violate basic food hygiene procedures, all while Christy films and narrates, laughing in the background.
Finally, after 45 seconds, he makes it back.
Thank you.
And have a nice day.
Yeah, have a good one.
And that's how we give change to our Domino's customers. Thank you, Michael.
And at one point, the camera shows him wiping his rear end with a cleaning cloth used in the store. The implication was clear, the food being contaminated was going to be served to real customers. Within hours, the video was spreading across blogs, message boards, and social media. Viewers who saw it were stunned, not just by what they were seeing, but how casual their tone was. This wasn't someone caught on hidden camera, these were employees voluntarily showcasing themselves doing something disgusting, smiling for the audience and acting like they had nothing to lose. And I just have to say, the sheer lack of social awareness here is absolutely astounding. Like, I know outrage culture wasn't really a massive thing back then per se, but it was still so obviously just going to do zero good. Like, what is the point of any of this? And again, these people were in their early 30s. I genuinely remember these being teenagers or early 20s kids, but looking back on this, I just can't even believe it. There's even interviews of Christy's mother who bailed her out a day later, having to publicly try to calm down the situation and show her distaste for the incident. But like, this is a 31-year-old woman. Why does her mother have any obligation or interest in doing this or confirming that she was taught some sort of a lesson? This is, again, a grown adult. Obviously, the outrage was immediate, and within 24 hours, online sleuths had tracked down the location of the store using visual clues from the footage. Domino's headquarters, initially unaware of the video, was flooded with complaints, and by then it was already far out of their control. The video had gone viral, with more than 1 million views in just a few days. When people tracked down the location, this Conover franchise was shut down immediately. Domino's launched a full-scale internal investigation and sanitized the location top to bottom. Both Setzer and Hammonds were obviously fired on the spot, but the story was already dominating headlines and Domino's was now in crisis mode. At first, the company hesitated to make a public statement. Their media team had fear that acknowledging the video would only amplify it. But that silence was met with even more criticism. Customers were demanding answers, and so now, Domino's reversed course, and President Patrick Doyle released a video statement on YouTube, apologizing for the incident and promising swift changes. In the video, Doyle stated that the food in the video was never actually served, a claim echoed by Hammonds later, but by then, trust had already been damaged, and I don't know, everywhere I look it says something different, so just make of that what you will. I'm obviously tempted to believe the president of the company here, but at the same time, it could just be damage control. Regardless, the legal consequences came just as quickly. Both Setzer and Hammonds were arrested and charged with felony food tampering. Setzer eventually entered what's known as an Alford plea, not admitting guilt but acknowledging that prosecutors had enough evidence to convict him. And he received a 6-month suspended sentence, so, of course, no jail time. He also received 24 months of supervised probation, a $1,000 fine, and an order not to enter any Domino's Pizza locations or contact Hammonds again. Christy Hammonds pleaded guilty to a lesser charge and was given a 45-day suspended sentence, 18 months of probation, and 200 hours of community service. Again, this all just feels like a slap on the wrist. These are people in their 30s. Interestingly, there was recently a bit of a lost media hunt for the remainder of the videos of this incident. Online, there were only clips of the one where he sneezed into the food and news reports, but no actual copies anywhere of the remainder of the videos, which actually led a lot of people to question the validity of the claims. Even I thought it was crazy because I couldn't find these anywhere, and I'm pretty good at this sort of thing. And then I came across a Lost Media Wiki article on it. So here's a brief story of how these missing videos were eventually all found. For over 2 decades, the original footage from the notorious Domino's incident seemed to have vanished. Despite the infamy surrounding the case, none of the videos were properly preserved or archived. Only brief segments remained, and as previously mentioned, mostly just clips pulled from old news broadcasts. But this actually changed in April 2024 when this YouTube channel reignited interest in the case. On April 20th, he released a video laying out his efforts to track down the long-lost clips. According to his research, he had managed to locate 2 of the original 5 videos.
I have 2 out of 5 of those videos, and I'm looking for the other 3.
One titled Sneeze Sticks, and another known as Domino's Pizza Special Ingredients, similar to the only ones that I could find. Both had somehow survived in obscure corners of the internet, but the others apparently hadn't. He also said he had attempted to contact the administrator of a website called goodasyou.org, a site rumored to have hosted the full set of videos years ago. The owner was reportedly the one who originally archived them, but despite reaching out, Rosen never received a reply. About a week later, progress took another leap. A Discord user going by the name Colin reached out to Rosen directly. He claimed to have uncovered versions of all 5 videos, explaining that he had gone back through YouTube uploads from early April 2009, digging through lesser-known channels, and eventually he stumbled on one that had preserved each clip. They were low resolution, but they were intact, and just days later, another Discord user messaged Rosen with what appeared to be a 4th missing piece, a video titled Domino's Pizza Booger. It was watermarked and not in perfect condition, but it added another key file to the puzzle. And then this same user requested the archived link to goodasyou.org through the Wayback Machine, and it actually worked. Once he got it, he used a download tool to extract and save all the remaining videos, preserving them before they could disappear again, and these ones were actually in full quality. So yeah, this lost media is considered found, and they're all now available on the Internet Archive. The link is in this video's description if you for some reason want to watch this disgusting crap. I don't recommend it. All 5 of the original videos had finally been recovered, ending a 15-year gap in documentation, and restoring one of the internet's most infamous fast food scandals back into public record. It's a cool little internet hunt alongside a disgusting mess of a situation. Also, I'm just seeing this after I've already recorded everything, but it turns out that this Christy Hammonds woman is also a registered sex offender. In a remote village deep inside Russia, life unfolds at a slower, harder pace. Here, dense forests stretch for hundreds of miles, rivers snake through untouched land, and survival depends not just on skill, but on respect for the wild. Most grown adults would not even have what it would take to survive out here, but yet, in the summer of 2014, a 3-year-old girl would face this wilderness alone in a story that absolutely stunned the world. Karina Chikatova was an energetic child growing up in this isolated region, and on July 29th of 2014, she would face a situation that no child should ever have to. On this day, her father was believed to be traveling to a neighboring village, and without anyone realizing it, Karina decided to follow her father, bringing along only her small dog Naida for company. At first, no one noticed that she'd left and followed her father. In the confusion, her mother thought Karina was with her father, and her father thought that she had stayed behind, and it wasn't until several days later that the terrifying realization set in. Karina was missing. Panic spread very quickly. In an environment where wild bears and wolves roam freely and nighttime temperatures plummet, every single hour mattered. A massive search effort launched immediately, with over 100 people combing the surrounding wilderness, battling thick underbrush and brutal conditions. Helicopters scoured the dense canopy from above, but the grasses grew so tall and thick that spotting anything from the air was almost impossible. As the days dragged on, hopes for Karina's survival grew slimmer. Rescuers knew that even an adult would struggle to survive out there for long. The region's remote isolation meant there were no roads, no nearby settlements, only endless forests and the occasional river that cut through the land. But meanwhile, against all odds, Karina was actually still out there, and she was alive. In a feat of extraordinary resilience, she navigated the forest for days on foot. She survived by eating wild berries and drinking water from the streams. During the freezing nights, she would cling tightly to her dog, Naida, whose body warmth likely saved her from hypothermia in these early stages. But sadly, after 9 excruciating days, searchers still hadn't found any trace of her. The elements, the terrain, and the sheer size of the wilderness worked against them. And then just as they were already feeling hopeless, an even worse twist occurred. Naida, Karina's small dog, returned to the village alone. And at first, seeing the dog without Karina was a devastating blow. It seemed to confirm everyone's worst fears, but searchers quickly realized Naida might actually be the key, and so they decided to follow the dog, hoping she would lead them back to where Karina had last been seen. And for 3 more days, search teams trailed Naida's path into the forest, and finally, after 12 days lost in the wilderness, they miraculously found her. Karina was weak, severely dehydrated, and covered in mosquito bites, but she was alive. Rescuers carried her out of the forest, airlifting her to a nearby hospital. Doctors treated her for dehydration and minor injuries, amazed that she had no life-threatening conditions after almost 2 weeks alone in such brutal conditions. It was said that she weighed only about 17 pounds at the time of her rescue, which to me is just absolutely mind-boggling. Her story spread quickly across Russia and now the rest of the world. People were captivated by the incredible survival instincts shown by a 3-year-old girl and by the loyalty of the dog who had saved her life by keeping her warm at night, probably leading her to rivers, and ultimately leading rescuers back to her. In honor of the bond between Karina and Naida, a statue was later erected at a nearby airport, showing the two side by side, a permanent tribute to one of the most remarkable survival stories in recent memory. Today, Karina Shikatova lives a quieter life, one away from the media spotlight. Interviews with her family revealed a shy but strong-willed young girl who had grown up deeply connected to the land around her. And though she rarely speaks about those harrowing days now, her survival against impossible odds remains one of the most astonishing stories ever to come out of the Siberian wilderness. If you asked anyone who remembered her, they'd probably describe Hedviga Golik as a secretive and traditional woman, the kind of person who found comfort in routine. She liked her tea, she lived alone, and she kept to herself in a small apartment. She had no kids, no husband, and no close family nearby. She was just a woman who went about her life in the capital of what was then Yugoslavia. She was known to have random outbursts at times, but she was generally pretty reclusive, and as the years went on and she got older, she ended up falling out with everyone. People just came to accept this. But then in 1966, it was almost like Hedviga had just vanished. There was no big commotion, no police reports or breaking news. One day she was there and one day she wasn't. And somehow, no one really followed up. No missing persons case or investigation. By the time the 1970s had rolled around, people had just stopped asking questions, if they'd ever even asked them in the first place. The building she lived in changed hands, governments shifted, and life moved on. And at a point, her apartment was reportedly just considered vacant by local authorities. Rent wasn't paid, utilities went untouched, but instead of breaking in or investigating, the unit was just left sealed and forgotten, chalked up to another oversight in a system that didn't exactly excel at paperwork. And for decades, this apartment was just ignored, but then came 2008, an entire 42 years later. Croatia had long since declared independence. Officials began conducting door-to-door checks across this city. And that's when someone finally took a second look at apartment 3B in this building, a unit listed as vacant for decades in what was originally Hedviga's. But when municipal workers forced open the door, what they found was the last thing they ever expected. The apartment was untouched, dust coated everything, the curtains were drawn, and the furniture was dated and frozen in a 1960s aesthetic. A teacup sat on the table as if someone had just stepped away for a moment, but in the living room armchair, they found something no one was prepared for. The mummified remains of Hedviga Golik, which had been sitting there undisturbed for 42 years. She was still in her nightgown, still seated in front of her old black and white TV, and she was deceased for over 4 decades. She had went completely unnoticed this entire time. Authorities sealed the scene and launched a formal investigation, though answers were limited. The apartment had been locked from the inside, windows were shut, and no signs of forced entry or violence were present. Medical experts concluded that she likely died of natural causes not long after she was last seen in 1966. The unique conditions inside the flat, the sealed environment, the low humidity, and the complete isolation had preserved her body in an eerily intact state. And neighbors were absolutely stunned. One woman told reporters she'd always assumed that the apartment had just been abandoned. Others admitted that they didn't really remember anyone living there at all, and by the time someone noticed, nearly an entire generation had passed. And from what I can tell, this is the longest that someone ever went unnoticed in a situation like this. When her body was discovered in 2008, media across Europe jumped on the story. One outlet called it a real-life Sleeping Beauty case, but there was nothing magical about this. It was really just deeply sad and deeply preventable. Hedviga Golik died alone in the middle of a city, and no one knew it. Or if they did, no one acted. Her case did spark some public outcry, with housing officials across Croatia beginning to reevaluate long-abandoned properties. Hedviga didn't go out in a dramatic way, but the quiet way that she left this world and the even quieter decades that followed still haunt the people who hear her story. On a Friday afternoon in April of 2024, a 25-year-old man named Li was working as a swimming coach at a fitness center in China. By all accounts, he was confident, disciplined, and experienced. He was an instructor trusted with helping others build strength and safety in the water. But what was going to happen inside that pool this time around was something no one expected, and what followed raised serious questions about responsibility, judgment, and why no one intervened. On the 26th of April in 2024, Li was conducting breath hold training. It's a common practice among swimmers designed to increase lung capacity, boost endurance, and improve overall performance under pressure. But this sort of training is also obviously risky. Without proper safety measures, breath holding in water can quickly spiral into hypoxia, shallow water blackout, and even death. Experts around the world have warned about it for years. According to reports, Li voluntarily entered the pool to practice extended breath holding. And unfortunately, at some point in the process, Li would black out and he would end up passing away. But despite so many people being around, nobody did anything to help him in time. And in the process, someone nearby, possibly another staff member, recorded this incident on video close up. And this wasn't just some short clip. They reportedly filmed the entire process of Li suffocating underwater for nearly 10 minutes straight. No one jumped in, no one sounded an alarm, and no one pulled him out. And honestly, this video is extremely frustrating to watch. The person behind the camera is laughing, completely unaware as they are watching this happen. And to say it is disturbing is an absolute understatement. I really just can't even show you guys this on YouTube, and I know that sucks for some of you, but this was just so perplexing to me that I still had to cover it. I don't even care. A while after he clearly lost consciousness, people finally reacted. Emergency responders were eventually called, and Li was pulled from the water and taken for medical treatment, but it was just far too late at this point. He was pronounced deceased shortly after, and it was said that the lifeguards did not have CPR training, which I don't know, there's just so much wrong here, and this is just so hard to watch. The questions just keep rolling, and I have no idea how they failed this man so badly. Authorities later deemed it an accidental drowning caused by prolonged breath holding. It was ruled unintentional, but disturbing questions remain, not just about the training technique, but about the environment that allowed this fatal delay in intervention. I mean, there's literally just a video of the whole thing, and nobody does anything. Breath hold training is not inherently reckless when it's done correctly, but it does require constant monitoring, strict limits, and immediate response protocols, all of which were not there. Li was alone in the water, and instead of stepping in, someone just filmed it. In China, the story made national headlines. Some blamed gym management for a lack of oversights, and others criticized the bystanders, especially the person recording. As of now, there's been no confirmation of disciplinary action or policy changes at the facility. This one is just really sad, and for many it is extremely difficult to watch. He didn't drown in a storm or a deep-sea dive. He passed away in a gym swimming pool in broad daylight surrounded by people, one of which was filming, and the silence in the video is kind of what makes this so haunting. The question isn't how Li passed away, it's why no one saved him when they had so much time to do so. It started out as a perfect day on a wide stretch of Australian coastline, and the woman at the center of the story, Nicole Graham, had written this beach before. Avalon Beach, just outside Geelong in Victoria, was a spot she knew very well. She was an experienced horsewoman with over 2 decades working with horses, and that afternoon in early 2012, she was out for a ride with her daughter and their horses, taking in the air and the peaceful shoreline, and for a while, this trip was completely routine. Nothing about it was even remotely concerning. But as Nicole and her horse Astro trotted across a particularly flat section of sand, they suddenly began to sink. Not all at once, but fast enough to know that something was wrong here. And unfortunately, this wasn't just damp sand. They'd wandered into a pocket of soft, sucking mud, or quicksand, hidden just beneath the surface. And Astro, a 500-kilogram show horse, panicked instantly. His massive legs churned beneath him, but the more he fought, the deeper he sank, and within minutes, the mud had him up to his chest and then eventually this poor horse's neck. Nicole's daughter, who was riding a smaller horse, was also caught for a moment, but thankfully she was able to free herself and sprinted her help. But Nicole, she wasn't so lucky even. She didn't actually move. She stayed behind Astro, kneeling in the rising mud and holding his head above the surface, trying to keep him calm and talking to him, reassuring him for hours. By the time emergency responders arrived, Astro had been stuck for nearly an hour. Rescue crews from the Country Fire Authority and a local veterinarian came to assess the situation, and it was clear that this poor horse was exhausted. Photos taken show him covered in sweat, breathing hard, and just the extent of how bad this situation was. And then horribly, just to make things worse, the tide started to come in. His legs were trapped extremely deep, unable to move, and this tide was not going to wait. And beautifully, Nicole was actually still right beside him. For over 3 hours, Nicole and rescuers worked against the clock in the ocean. They used ropes, boards, shovels, but nothing worked. Every single attempt to dig this horse out only made the mud collapse further in. The vet sedated Astro to prevent him from thrashing, putting himself deeper, and injuring himself in general. And again, Nicole stayed with him this entire time. And at this point, you're probably hoping that this story goes in a positive direction. Well, your hopes would be right in this case, because with the tide inches away from swallowing them both, responders made the call to bring in a tractor. A heavy harness was then rigged beneath Astro's body, which was no easy task considering he was buried chest deep in quicksand and weighed what he did. But slowly and carefully, the machine lifted, and eventually, Astro was actually freed. He didn't bolt and he didn't panic. He stood there trembling, covered in muck. He was a bit bruised, but he was alive. Unexpectedly, Nicole as well had to be helped from the mud. Hours of physical and emotional strain had taken their toll, but she'd never once considered leaving Astro behind, not even for a second. The story made headlines across Australia and beyond, not just because of the incredible rescue, but because of the images that were taken and defined it. She absolutely did not give up, and it's the kind of bond you can't explain unless you've had it. Avalon Beach wasn't known for quicksand, but like with many tidal areas, the terrain can always shift. A seemingly solid path can suddenly give way, especially after a heavy rainfall or receding tides. And while Nicole did know the risks of coastal riding, nothing in her experience had prepared her for that level of danger, but all things considered, she handled it beautifully. She later said, "It was terrifying. The mud was like quicksand, and every time I moved, it sucked me back down, but I couldn't leave him." And she didn't. Astro survived with no serious injuries. They both walked away shaken, but Nicole was very grateful, and the rescue teams were praised for their fast action and refusal to give up, even when the odds seemed impossible. That's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, but if not, that's okay.